go off the rails. Don't you know it's time to raise our sails? It's freedom.
Are you kidding me? I swear to God, I'm gonna snap my controller.
Jump with me, girl, point with me, oh yeah.
Doing a level 1 run is nothing new in the Souls community. It's been done hundreds of times. And in no time at all, everyone knows what strategies to use and what weapons to wield in order to trivialize it. But with the new DLC finally coming out, I thought that it was my time to attempt one. I didn't just want to make it a normal one though. You only get one chance to experience a game for the first time. So what if I tried making my first playthrough a level 1 run without any prior knowledge? Could I beat it? Only one way to find out. This is my painful journey through Shadow of the Erdtree at level 1. Of course, before we can even begin our level 1 DLC adventure, we need to get there, which is a task that is easier said than done. But luckily for me, since Elden Ring has been out for such a long time now, the level 1 meta has pretty much been solved. I won't bore you with all the details, but pretty much we just make a beeline over to the Deathbird in Caelid, get it to jump off a cliff, and then blast through the entire game using the weapon it drops. I interacted with Miquella's hand, and just like that, we are in the DLC. Since this wouldn't really be fun if I just used the strategy that someone else has already come up with, I won't use any weapons or spells from the base game. Should make for a bit more of an interesting playthrough. Since this was my first playthrough and I had never seen this before, I of course had no idea where to go, which isn't great when you don't even have a weapon to defend yourself with. Well, I did not expect that. Step 1 would therefore of course be to find one. I scoured the entirety of the first area, but despite the DLC promising over 95 weapons, I just couldn't seem to find one. It was only 20 minutes later when I finally came across one. Black Hand Blade. Luckily for me, it has a really nice quick moveset, does a fair bit of bleed damage, and has an Ash of War that dashes behind enemies. It also, importantly, only requires 10 strength and 13 dexterity. All things considered, a really solid first find. With an actual weapon, I felt 100 times more confident, and so it was time to head over to the first real area of the game. And it was here where I would discover what playing the DLC at level 1 actually would mean for most encounters. Okay. Good prank, bro. Good prank. Yeah, as I'm sure you can tell, most things are just a straight up one-shot. And it will be a real wake-up call as to how hard this was going to be when I ran into the first invader. He hits hard, has moves which he cannot be staggered out of, and if even one attack lands, it's instantly game over. What also did not help with this fight was that I had pretty much not touched a Souls-like game for the better part of a year at this point. It was not until I noticed that by using the sprint attack, I could almost always get in 4 free attacks on him that I had any chance at all. But even with this knowledge, it still took me a while to beat. 19 attempts to be exact. This was not the confidence boost I was looking for. The DLC does have a built-in system, which is meant to at least somewhat negate how hard enemies hit. It involves using these Skadoo tree fragments found around the world to increase both our damage and survivability. But even with it, it's not designed for a character with 15 vigor. So for the most part, even with this, it won't save us from the big hard-hitting attacks. After a while, I managed to make it over to the first real boss, the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. But it quickly became apparent that this weapon I had simply wouldn't cut it. I needed something better, something stronger. So instead of bashing my head against this indestructible wall, I decided to cut my losses and continue to explore the rest of the world for other upgrades. And I would find my first one not too far away in a dungeon located here. After making it past what is probably one of the most disgusting enemies FromSoft has ever made. What the f*** are you? Oh, kill it! Thanks for the nightmares as always. And seeing a fellow Tarnish get murdered by Lord knows what, I arrived at the boss. By far the strongest and coolest demi-human enemy in the game. He's very fast and has a lot of moves which teleport him, so my first attempt could have gone better for sure. I did quickly notice, however, that I attacked fast enough to stun lock him as long as I had stamina. This knowledge really trivialized the fight, and just 2 attempts later I managed to beat him. We actually get his Spirit Ash. It has all of his moves, and due to how much he teleports, is really elusive. This was a good start, as I now actually had access to a summon, but I still did not think it would be enough to tackle the Divine Beast. I would need some sort of weapon upgrade. So I spent the better part of 3 hours just exploring the world, and while I did not find any noteworthy upgrades, I still got to re-experience just how special playing Elden Ring for the very first time had felt. I did eventually come across another cave, and after a quick prank, fell all the way down to the boss. The Ancient Dragon Man, as he is called, is just an invader enemy, so beating it shouldn't really have been that hard, but as we saw previously, that did not stop me from repeatedly failing. Thankfully, the same strategy of using running attacks still worked, and therefore it only took me a few attempts to actually beat. Beating him rewarded me with his weapon, the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana. Its Ash of War fires off a projectile which deals a really solid amount of damage, and in the same way as Moonveil, can hit with both the weapon itself and the projectile for some really crazy stagger buildup. A bit further down the road was this giant dead dragon and a biome with red flowers and a Deathrite bird. If you are unaware, the Deathrite birds in the base game always use the same weapons that they drop to fight with, and I quickly noticed that this one was using the very same weapon that carried me through the entire base game. Curious if he would drop some sort of upgraded version of it, I decided to try and beat him, which was a real struggle. Not only would it leave fire everywhere, which quickly removed my one free hit I could take, it was also surrounded by a bunch of other smaller birds that all would kill me in one hit. I tried for a while, before coming to the realization that this was an open world boss, which are extremely prone to being cheesed. I would just have to find it. First, I tried this cliff here, thinking that it might work the same as the one in Caelid, and while it might be possible and I got pretty close a few times, it never actually jumped off. Next up, I tried standing on top of one of the pillars, thinking that it might stop the attacks, but that did not really work as planned. The thing that would work was running up this cliff. It was just far enough away where the Deathbird would slowly start backing away after approaching, but not too far away as to be unshootable by this bow I had found earlier. The only real attacks which could reach me was the line of fire, and this projectile one... Why did I try to manually dodge it? Easily avoidable by simply going up this cliff. After around 50 wrought arrows and 200 holy arrows, I managed to bring it down, actually getting the same Ash of War that's on the Death's Poker. But unfortunately, for some reason, this one is very weak in comparison. Weak enough to not even be viable to use. Anyways, with my new katana in hand, feeling like I might actually have a chance now, I returned to challenge the lion once more. And to be fair, it did go like 100 times better than the first time, but as soon as he got to around 60% HP, things changed. Here he changes elements and gets lightning, and he gets such an increase in damage that if I got touched at all, it would instantly be over. What made it even more frustrating was that this boss had some very strange animations, fitting really nicely with its theme, but making it incredibly frustrating to fight hitless. At least for someone like me that is not the greatest player of all time. And so I decided that I still needed another way of beating him, and therefore decided to try my luck over at some of the later parts of the DLC. Normally to get here, you would need to kill Rellana, but since I couldn't even beat the Divine Lion, this really was not an option. There is one way of skipping it though. By going over to this area, there's a hidden spirit spring which lets you completely bypass the castle and reach the Skadu Altus without it. And it was right after the castle where I found the repeating crossbow, the weapon that at all would make the lion fight feel manageable. It has the skill Repeating Fire, firing 12 bolts in extremely quick succession, quickly letting me afflict an enemy with Scarlet Rot or Poison in just 2 volleys. And looking at the lion's weaknesses, this is exactly what he is weak to. It did still take a few tries, but this, combined with the nice damage from the Dragon Katana, was what finally let me beat it. Oh, thank God I used a Great Rune. Ah, yes! Damn, that feels good. The lion drops his head, a helmet which gives +4 to strength and dexterity, by far the best stat boosting helmet in the entire game. And as a bonus, it of course also looks extremely good. Next up was the boss I had brushed past earlier, Rellana. But before getting to her, I would need to kill the Carrion Knight guarding her. He's simply too strong to care about getting staggered, and therefore the other strategy I had used on invaders would just not work. But just like all other enemies, he does have a max range he will chase you out to, letting me drag him all the way over to the edge of his aggro range and then just stand outside it, bombarding him with ranged moves. Hey, sorry, just a quick interruption. This video took a really long time to make, so if you're enjoying it, then why not hit the subscribe button? It's free and I'll definitely make more Elden Ring content in the future. Anyways, back to the video. Time for Rellana. During phase 1, she already has 2 very annoying moves. A projectile, which deals pure magic damage, and a big sword attack, which is followed up by another swipe. Since they deal pure magic damage, I did not have enough resistance to actually tank a hit, and so naturally they would both one-shot me. I decided again that having to flawlessly dodge everything in this fight wouldn't be doable, and so decided to look through the new amulets available in the DLC. And there was one that can be acquired right next to the entrance of her castle, the +3 version of the Spelldrake talisman. Using it put my magic resistance all the way up to 68, which was just enough to be able to tank the attacks if I was on full HP. I could now easily make it past phase 1 every time, but phase 2 is really where things kick into high gear. Her one projectile becomes 5, and she also gets a devastating fire attack which would demolish my summons instantly. But worst of all was this attack. Are you kidding me? What was that? For the longest time, I just couldn't get the roll timing down and would die every time I got here. And as you can imagine, I felt quite dumb when I finally figured out that all you have to do is jump over the waves, beating her on the very same attempt. Why didn't I just try that earlier? The next area I will get to was Shadowkeep, and after killing a golden hippopotamus on my first try, I pretty quickly got to the one boss I really did not expect to encounter so soon. Is this Mesmer? Wait, what? I thought he would be the final boss of the DLC. How am I already here? Indeed, you can just sprint to Mesmer, but I was not ready and it went about as well as expected. Yeah, okay, I don't know what I expected, to be honest. The good news was that I did not have to challenge him yet, as there was another way through the castle that led onto what just might be one of the best looking areas FromSoft has ever made, the Ancient Ruins of Rao. Its boss Rellana is next on the list, and she is tough. After one sorry attempt, I already knew that I would need something else, and this time the crossbow strategy just wouldn't work, as she is very strong against Scarlet Rot. After a while of looking, I think I might have found something that would give me a fighting chance. Right outside the Mesmer fight is a ledge you can drop down to find what is probably the most broken sorcery in the entire game right now. There are already a few other thorn sorceries in the base game, and they are all very mediocre, but this one is far from bad. It has insane range with crazy blood loss buildup, and if standing close enough can hit with all 3 of its projectiles for pretty much instant bleed against anyone. This sounds too good to be true, and it kind of is, as there are a few drawbacks. First, it requires 24 faith, annoyingly just 1 more than what is easily accessible through gear and items. It can be solved by using Godric's Great Rune, but it does mean that I might need to farm a few rats if it takes too many attempts. Secondly, the spell does a small amount of damage to me every time I use it. This would not matter if not for the fact that most of our defense comes from being on full HP, leaving me to not just get one shot by her big attacks, but now by every attack. And as established earlier, I am just too bad at the game to make this work. The way I got around this is by using another consumable, the Uplifting Aromatic. It lasts for 40 seconds, and just like the Opaline tier, grants plus 90% damage negation until hit. So now, being able to tank 11 hits and having an insanely strong damaging spell, it should make this next encounter easy, right? Yeah, not exactly. Romina has a few attacks that she does throughout the entire fight, which are very annoying. She likes using this one the most, first, jumping forward and following up with another swing. Easy enough to dodge, but if I ever get hit by the first strike, there's not enough time to dodge out of the way of the second one, meaning instant death every time. She also attacks with her centipede, which has a very long lingering hitbox, making the only way to dodge it to go backwards. After what might have been too many attempts, I got good enough at dodging them and got her down to half HP. Here she starts flying a whole lot, barely ever staying on the ground, which is annoying since all my attacks only can land while she's grounded. And even with me bleeding her every 2 uses of thorns, it took more than 20 attempts before I finally managed to bring her down, thanks to a lucky timing on a stagger. With Rellana dead, I picked up the O Mother gesture and started the Ymir questline, in which I somehow managed to die when I actually got the chance of seeing what was below his chair. Of course I die here, classic me. The time had come for what might just be the worst boss I have played in any FromSoft game. So far I love the DLC to death, but this guy in particular, I wouldn't mind seeing him removed. Oh. It's a boss. And I'm dead, okay. I honestly had no idea how to tackle this boss. He attacks constantly with barely any downtime, not letting me get any attacks that require more than 1 second of casting. Aha, 7,700 damage dealt to my summon in 1 second? Oh, okay, yeah. No, sure. I thought that since using Torrent was available here, that might be the strategy. But it's not a very good one, as on his mount, he's simply faster and would just catch up and kill me every time. Thankfully, I found a trick that could, while not completely trivialize the fight, at least make it a lot easier. You see, there's this corner here, to the left, right after entering the arena. And it just so happens that by jumping on Torrent, dodging his first charge, and then making a beeline for the other side of the corner, he would in most cases get completely stuck and be unable to attack me at all. Now I just needed a way of damaging him. I tried the Frost Stomp gotten from the Divine Beast, which did work, but only when I was standing up in this corner, a location from where he could actually hit me. I also tried the Thorns, but sadly they don't go through walls, so that was another dud. I did find that the Deadly Poison perfume bottle could poison him through the wall, but having to wait 6 minutes just to get him down to half HP felt like it took too long. The answer turned out to be an incantation, acquirable from Ramira's Remembrance, the boss we had just beaten. The circle of butterflies it makes had just enough range to actually spawn behind the wall, dealing some solid damage and inflicting him with Scarlet Rot. The only catch with it was the fact that it required 33 faith, a number which only could be reached by using the Faith Not tier in my physic. It only lasts 3 minutes, so I would have to beat the fight in that time. I was consistently able to get him down to half HP with this strategy, but when he gets down to this threshold, he would actually free himself as he does his big dive bomb attack. So at this point, I not only had to dodge it, but also get him stuck again behind the pillar. This took a lot of tries, and even when I did actually manage to get him stuck, he would always use the same move again when he had less than 10% HP, resulting in some gut-wrenching attempts. Oh shit, he's out again. No, not like this, man. Come on, he's so close. Oh shit, I'm out. Please, please be enough. It was only when I got lucky enough to burst him down before he could even leave that I actually managed to beat him. Thank God that's done. I don't know if I'm just bad or what, but that guy was not fun. With that bottom tier boss dealt with, I walked over to the statue next door, used the O Mother gesture, and entered the path to the Shaman village. Right next to it is the second set of finger ruins for Ymir's questline, and after sounding the hanging bell, we can challenge the next remembrance boss. After some less than stellar performance from my part against an invader, it is time for the Mother of Fingers. She has some pretty odd moves that are all quite hard to predict, especially this one, where she does a jump which hits twice. I noticed that by standing in front of her and not to the side, during phase 1 she would mostly limit her attacks to beams, which are by far the easiest ones to dodge. By doing this, I was mostly able to get her down to half HP every time. But then we get to phase 2. During the phase transition, I had to be careful as to not stand too close, as it actually also hits twice. She also has an even bigger beam attack, which, while not being too hard to dodge, would just outright kill my summon, as they never even attempt to leave its massive AoE. Phase 2 took a few attempts to get down, but all in all, it still wasn't all that bad, at least not compared to the bosses that had come before, and I just needed 8 tries before I managed to beat it. And that was such an interesting boss. With the Finger Mother defeated, it was time to return to the Cerulean coast, head down into its massive crater and challenge the Putrescent Knight. And this would be the hardest one yet. As far as I can tell, he cannot be bled, so using the thorns is out of the question, meaning that my damage was basically limited to Dragon Wound Slash, not nearly as high as I would have liked it to be. Compared to most other bosses, he also shreds through summons like crazy. This meant that if I left Josh alone for more than 2 seconds, he would just instantly get destroyed. And I haven't even talked about his actual moves yet. Whoa, 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 whoa. He hits extremely hard and fast, with annoying delays completely designed to just roll catch you. And that's not even mentioning this attack. What is he doing? What? Was this boss beatable? Sure, if you're extremely good at these games, you can beat them with a toothpick. But my strength isn't really being good at these games, it's finding weird solutions to them. So instead of just brute forcing it, I decided to look at the issues. The first one to solve was the fact that my summons got shredded immediately. Josh, while great at dodging normally, kinda just stands there getting stun locked, so I would finally need to look for a better one. I had done Ymir's full questline before and gotten Jolan's Ashes. By herself, she's nothing special though, but it just so happens that this Ash in particular is actually upgradable over at the Shaman village. On the backside of it is a hidden rise, and in it is a puppet. By interacting with it while having Jolan's Ashes, it gets upgraded to Jolan and Anna, one of the strongest Ashes in the game. They inflict very heavy bleed, which sadly wouldn't be relevant here, but since there's 2 of them, they can also tank way more. Still, even with this, it hardly went any better. I needed some sort of damage upgrade on my own. Looking at the Putrescent Knight's weaknesses, he's especially vulnerable to holy damage. And there just so happens to be a few new, very good incantations that do just that. These being multi-layered Rings of Light and the Giant Golden Arc. One can be gotten from the Leonine Misbegotten in the area right before the fight, and the other one in a chest after waking up a Furnace Golem. Since they require 34 and 36 faith respectively, not even all the faith stacking equipment and Godric's Great Rune would be enough, so I would sadly have to rely on the Faith Knot Crystal tier. But 3 minutes should be more than enough with this amount of damage. Since he likes riding around a lot, being at least somewhat close would be needed in order to land any damage, but that also meant having to learn his hardest looking attack. Thankfully it looks way harder than it actually is to dodge. All that is required is spam rolling right after the horse comes at you, and you will just automatically dodge the other attack. The fire attack is not that bad either once you know that all that is needed is to jump over the flames. At least it shouldn't have been. Ah, oh, come on man, so close. Despite me playing very bad, with this combo of items, I managed to bring him down in less than 10 tries. Still putting the total attempts it took me probably somewhere in the high 30s. Who's this? Imbibe nectar. I've never heard the word imbibe before. Wait, what? Next on the chopping block was Bale the Dread, or should I say... great start. He is, while being the coolest, probably the easiest boss yet. All his moves are very well telegraphed, and while I did get one shot, most dragons are designed around this fact, even normally. It certainly also helped having a summon with me that dealt a solid 1000 damage per hit, and could tank him alone for a full minute. And since he's a dragon, he also took extra damage from my katana, and I managed to beat him in just 5 tries. Finally we got a boss which didn't dip into the double figures. The Erdtree avatar comes next, which is a very interesting gimmick boss, as instead of having just one health bar, he has 3 very small ones. But apart from that, there's really not much to say about this one. Since the health bars are so small, all I had to do was just attack him a few times, which meant only dodging a few moves, which all were very well telegraphed, apart from this one. Okay, that's some interesting range. It does only appear during the 3rd health bar though, and does leave it open to attack for a very long time. Again, 8 attempts was all that it took. Nice, we're finally getting some bosses that I can actually beat. With the avatar dead, it's time for the spooky part. Hello, Torrent? What is happening? Personally, I think this area is one of the cooler ones in the DLC, turning the normal Souls-like experience at least briefly into a stealth game. Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. I did not sign up for this. When did this game become a horror game, man? After getting past them, it was time to challenge Midra. Jesus, bro's really going through it, huh? I mean, this has to be a boss, right? Just look at this room. Why am I so bad at these games? No, I did not die before the boss fight even started like 5 times. That totally didn't happen. Anyways, yes, Midra. In my humble opinion, the coolest design on a boss in maybe the entirety of Elden Ring. But having an excellent design sadly did not make this fight any easier. I had no idea how to even start this encounter at first. He always begins with this attack, so if I had not drunk my physic prior, I wouldn't even have time to get my summons off. Thankfully, there's plenty of time to do so right before the cutscene, meaning that I would only lose my first shield when getting in. It did still take a while to get used to the weird timings of the first attack, but eventually I got good enough at dodging it. But that is just the first attack. I did notice that Thorns, combined with the great bleed buildup from Jolan and Anna, was enough to bleed him every other Thorn or so, but still, I was not getting anywhere near close during any of my attempts. I would always eventually get hit by at least one of his tracking lunging hits. But then, somehow, again during my 8th attempt, when I had at most gotten him to half HP, everything just clicked. I managed to flawlessly dodge the first attack for the first time, and then quickly got him down to half HP with all of the aggro my summons were pulling. Damn, he staggers easily. Oh, what was that? Oh fuck, okay, what is this? This is the end. This is the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the end. How am I alive? How am I alive? Ain't no way I lived that. Oh my god, I could actually do this. Well then. When in doubt, just panic roll, I guess. Yeah, I still don't know either. Somehow, all of his attacks just perfectly lined up for me just spam rolling. Anyways, with that not lucky at all attempt, Midra was down, and with him, all of the optional remembrance bosses. The time had finally come to return to Mesmer. And he would prove to be the biggest problem yet. He always starts off with this move, giving me enough time to summon while still having plenty of time to dodge it. But after that, the rest of the fight is just pure chaos. Most of his moves have very long, lingering fire hitboxes, all designed to roll catch. And saying that his attack strings are long would be an understatement. I died and I died and I died, and it took me a long time just to make it to phase 2. But of course, phase 2 does not get any better. He starts out with a very similar move as the first one, but this one is way less obvious when to dodge. The hitboxes on the snakes are very strange, so dodging out of the way of every single one proved to be extremely hard. And despite me melting his HP with thorns, I still just couldn't quite finish him. In this fight, I just simply had to get good, and it took me over 30 attempts before I finally got him. With Mesmer's kindling now, I could return to Romina's arena and burn the ceiling tree, revealing the way over to the very last area of the DLC, Enir Ilim. My plan here was just to run past everything, and to be fair, it was working, up until I arrived at the first beast warrior. You see, right behind him is a set of staircases, guarded by 2 really annoying enemies. They constantly spammed damaging rings all around me as I approached, and were even smart enough to spawn them in front of me. And of course, more than one of these rings spelled instant death. I couldn't just take it slow either, as the lightning guy was just hot on my tail. And while I did try to kill him a few times, I quickly realized that it would be way more effort than it was actually worth. This was the most frustrating part yet of the DLC, and if the area before the boss itself is this annoying, then that does not bode well for what is to come. I finally managed to get past them in like 15 attempts, and then immediately died to a few birds. Anyways, time for the second to last boss, if you can even call it that. The battle with Lida and all her allies. This fight is, it's just pure mayhem. 6 Tarnished running at each other in all-out war. I had only done Tholier and Moore's questlines, so thankfully it was just a 3v3, but that does not mean it was easy. All of these NPCs have well over 20,000 health each, and of course can all heal themselves once. They have this kind of HP since you're meant to be really strong at this point, but I could not even tank a single hit. Still, it is just an NPC fight and they do stagger quite easily, so it did just take 4 attempts. Felt good to get my frustration out from that previous part. Lida's death meant only one thing: we have made it to the final boss. And as I'm sure you predicted, this was by far the hardest one, and it's not even close. It was time for Prime Radahn. I almost got him there, guys. Don't worry, just a few more tries. So let's break it down and go through the painstaking process that was beating Consort Radahn. The biggest hurdle to overcome with this encounter was just how quickly he demolished summons. Up until this point at least, I had been able to successfully juggle the aggro between me and my summons, only having to dodge a little over half the attacks myself. But it's not even that he kills the summons fast, he ruins them. A few times, despite all odds, I did manage to get to phase 2, and well, I'll just let you see what happened yourself. What is he doing? What is this? What? This clearly was not working. I needed a completely new plan. And after some thinking, I came to the conclusion that my only chance would be shields. Shield builds are widely known as being the cheesiest, easiest way of beating the game, but I wasn't sure if it would even work at level 1. With the limited amount of strength I had, the only shield which I could actually wield was the Mesmer soldier one, so I decided to give it a go and see if it at all could block his attacks. Holy shit, it's actually working. Come phase 2, I still got destroyed, but at least there was a start. Picking the perfect shield would be crucial to this working, so I looked through them all and decided on the Black Steel Great Shield. Radahn does a lot of holy damage in phase 2, and it has even higher holy resistance than the Fingerprint Shield, the otherwise best shield in the game. In order to use it though, with another weapon in my offhand, I would need 35 strength. A requirement which I wasn't even sure was reachable at level 1. But evidently I was very wrong. You see, by stacking the Strength Knot here, Radahn Sword Seal, Godrick's Great Rune, the Star Scourge Heirloom, and the new Horned Warrior Hat, you can get up to 40 strength, which means that by two-handing, a level 1 character can get 60 strength and use the highest strength required weapon in the game. To make the shield even more tanky, I also decided to collect the Holy Ground Ash of War, which leaves behind an area which would reduce all damage I took, and the Scholar's Shield from Saloon, reducing stamina consumption from blocking by a massive 35%. With that, I grabbed a random spear and it was time to test my creation against Radahn, and I gotta say, right away I could feel the difference. During attempt 1, I was already surviving a lot longer, up until I mishandled my stamina. And this would be the only flaw with this strategy. If I ever ran out, which I usually did at some point, unless I got lucky, I would instantly get killed. So to actually beat this, I would methodically have to learn when I could stop blocking during his attack strings to recover small amounts of stamina in order to get back to a full bar. I died so many times, so much so that my attempts had to span over the course of a few days to not make myself go mad. And while I got to phase 2 many times, all my runs would end as soon as the Scholar Shield buff ran out. My stamina bar being so small meant that I really needed to stack both the Great Shield, Two-Headed Turtle Talisman, and the Scholar Shield to have any chance at all. And since the shield buff only lasts for 60 seconds, I would basically have to phase transition him in this time, both for normal phase 1 to phase 2 and to the Meteor phase in order to refresh this buff. Eventually it became clear to me that I did not have enough damage for this, as I was completely relying on bleed and freeze and did less than 400 damage each poke. So to fix this, I decided to swap over to the sword lance, almost doubling my damage but also penalizing me with a minus 20 to stamina recovery, as it put me on heavy load. And now there was nothing left to do than simply to practice. I got so many great attempts, but I never quite had enough time to finish it, and would always either lose the shield buff or run out of the 10 strength from my physic, getting my stamina drained and then instantly get one shot. I did get this attempt like 2 hours in. Oh no, oh, I got so close. Which was a real shame, as it would take 5 more hours and over 100 attempts before I finally got it. So let's just go through the run that finally did it, shall we? First, I started off by buffing my shield and drinking my physic. At this point, I completely had phase 1 on lock and could easily get in 3 or 4 attacks during most of his attack strings, before making sure to get myself back up to full stamina. This easily let me make it to phase 2 before the buff on my shield could even run out. At the start of phase 2, he always uses the same move, or at least he's supposed to, but I lost dozens of attempts to him just not feeling like it. Anyways, the huge AoE attack he does has such a long cast time that I had just enough time to cast both Holy Ground and recast the Scholar's Shield. Right as the attack ends, I also made sure to eat a well-pickled turtleneck for even more stamina regen. I now have 1 minute, just until the Scholar's Shield runs out, to get him low enough to do his big meteor attack. So being extremely aggressive here is a must, and it was here where most attempts were lost. Oh my god, that was way too close. At 25% HP, he does the meteor attack, and to fully dodge it, I just had to sprint in the opposite direction that he was facing until I could see the big explosion. He temporarily stops here, giving me just enough time to drink a FP potion and summon in a temporary meat shield. I also got very lucky here, as he used a big AoE attack again, giving me enough time to refresh the Scholar's buff one final time. And yeah, all that was left now was just to poke away at him, managing to finish him in 2 minutes and 55 seconds, just 5 seconds before the physic would have ran out. Is there another better strategy to this fight that probably could have destroyed him way faster? Yes, definitely. But I wanted this challenge to be about me figuring out and beating the DLC without any outside help. If you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing. Currently, there's not much Elden Ring content on this channel, but I definitely plan on making more in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll leave you with a full unedited Radahn run for those who care to watch it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.